Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com, bringing to you today's lesson in our Shemot Kodashim, using holy names, new course here at the KosherTorah School. This is lesson number 2. We just began. And before we get into the nitty-gritties of absolute practice, you know something? We got to understand the basics. Because like the example I gave in our previous class, putting a loaded gun into the hands of those not prepared to use it is a rather dangerous thing. And holy names are real. They have power in them, behind them, with them. But what is that power? Where does it come from? This is where we really need to address in today's lesson. So in this lesson, another preliminary before we get busy, we're going to talk about the difference between magic, kishufim, which is the biblical term for magic, and the usage of holy names. Because again, like it says, Psalm 119, verse 126, Et lasot lashem, time to act for God, because they make void his Torah. We got to set the record straight, because there is so much lies, misinformation, delusions, outright fabrications, such confusion out there about what is and what isn't real. Well, let's get busy. Number 1, if you want to believe in something, does that make it real? You're going to say, well, of course not. If it's real, it's real. And if it's not real, it's not real. Oh, really? You think so? Let me tell you something. The power of the human mind subjectively can make what is believed to be as experienced, and therefore internally believed or experienced, as anything external. Anybody who knows anything about hypnosis knows you can convince the mind to believe pretty much anything. And if there's any truth to all those wild and crazy conspiracy theories out there, that powers that be have the control through technologies to control brainwave influences and the like, oy boy, we're all in big trouble. Because this is how, since ancient times, what we called kishofim, or magic, worked. It's psychic. It's not hocus-pocus. There is no such thing as hocus-pocus. And are there other entities out there? Angels, spirits, and the like? Yeah. Can we communicate with them? Yeah, we do on a regular basis. But do we manipulate them to work for us? Here we are in our society today, yelling and screaming and demanding freedom, and yet at the same time, we would even want to consider enslaving other types of entities because they're not human? Yeah, you don't do things like that. If you were to go up to if you could go up to a real entity and like proverbially put a gun to its head and say, you're going to do this for me. I command you in the name, blah, blah, blah. Well, it might feel compelled. It might do it. But then once you're done, guess what? It comes back after you and will kick your you-know-what. For centuries, great and holy, wise sages, rabbis have warned us. You don't mess with this kind of stuff. Rabbi Yehuda HaHasid, Sefer Hasidim, writes, right? You mess with this stuff, they're going to come and get you. Oh, yeah, you don't mess with that. So all these morons, and yeah, they are, sorry guys, but if you're out there trying to practice ritual magic and you're going to invoke spirits, let me tell you, number 1, if you're invoking things which are not real, your delusions in the mind can make them real. So even though there's no such thing as the fiery demons of hell and all this other nonsense and nasty stuff, because you believe it, you create a subjective little bubble in your head, and you've essentially made it real. It's not real to anybody else but you. In psychology terms, we would call this psychosis. In biblical terms, we call this very strange, bizarre, foreign activity, otherwise known as avodah zara, idolatry. That's right. This is where the bad stuff comes from. So today, every now and then I even get phone calls and emails. People believe, oh, somebody's put a bad magic spell on me. The evil eyes upon me. And why? Because so many bad things are happening. Well, why are the bad things happening? It could be coincidence, but I agree. I'm not a big believer in coincidences. I believe in cause and effect. So bad things are happening. I try to look to understand why. If there is nothing at a physical, overt level that can be pointed to, then yeah, there very well might be psychic involvements. Because the evil eye, all evil intent, all malevolent feelings, they're real. And they get projected subconsciously or consciously whenever the individual, is so inclined. So you got to watch out for that stuff, because that's psychology. It's not hocus-pocus magic. That is what is real. So understand this. What is real is what we know from the mind and the emotions. And real psychic power is not generated out of the mind. It's generated out of the emotions. That's why most parapsychological research that's looking in the area of just detached thought will never find anything. All right? All entanglement is emotional. It's the Yitziratic connection. Now, when people create all kinds of ideas and beliefs, and I've read a whole bunch of these modern books that people come up with, and you know what? One of my pet peeves. All right, here's one of the funny ones. I just was joking about this with the Rabbanit earlier the last few days. I've seen in the dark magical circles, they conjure up the evil demon of BaalZebub. BaalZebub the demon. Oh my gosh, I sit there. And I said, oh, these morons, they have no idea what they're doing. Okay, history. The name BaalZebub comes from the Hebrew. It's written in the Book of Kings. And it's actually BaalZebub, Lord of the Flies, if you remember the novel. Well, what is that name? No, it is not the name of an entity. There was never a god named BaalZebub or anything of the kind. What it is a traditional, ancient, Israelite, historical, literary device, in which they never made a reference to the names of the foreign gods. They would always mock them. They would make fun of them. So whatever the name of the foreign god was, they'd say, oh yeah, he's the Lord of the Flies. That's what it is. And the flies, they hang around the poop pile. So that was the derogatory term used to describe the false god. But yet, somehow that derogatory term got transformed into the actual name of an actual demon, in which no such thing exists. Oh, but I know somebody will email me or drop a comment. Yes, but I've done conjuring and I've seen this and I've experienced that. And I believe that you have. But here in our Torah tradition, which is based upon Kedusha, holiness, we always emphasize what we say in Hebrew, Hamavdil ben Kodesh lahol, the separate between good and evil, right and wrong, light and darkness, truth and falsehood, right? Holy and the profane. And whenever an experience occurs, we ask with discretion. Inquiring minds want to know. There is a very curious story written by Rabbi Yehuda Fatia in his book Minchat Yehuda, which is available in English. I've translated this story in English on KosherTorah.com, and I think that the people who translated the book obviously must have that story in the book as well. So yeah, it's out there. It's a story that happened in old Baghdad when the Jewish community was still prominent there. And it said that a young boy, about 12 years old, was having visions or actual encounters with Elijah. And based upon his descriptions of these encounters, he went to great rabbis and they said, wow, this really must be Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. But Rabbi Yehuda Fatia says, no, There are certain elements of these descriptions which are not, adding up. And he went to the boy and he says, okay, went through a few different experiments and was able to discern that what that boy was actually experiencing was no such thing. Nothing legitimate, nothing real. It was false. And when exposed to be false, what do you know? It stops. People today make all kinds of claims about the Ouija board. Do you know what a Ouija board is? All right. It was a comic game. I think it's sold by like Milton Bradley, the game company today. The same people like make Monopoly games. It's from the two words yes, oui in French, ja or ja in German. It was it's a phony baloney thing. But people believe in it. And because they believe in it, they can make things happen through it. Do not underestimate the power of your mind. Your mind, through your emotions, what you fear, what you believe. This is what you can draw to yourself. So you can draw to yourself everything bad, or you can draw to yourself everything good. So therefore, when it comes to the actual use of Shemot Kodashim, holy names, we are not invoking principalities and powers. We're not calling for the angel of the wind or the mountain to come subserviate themselves to us. Remember what happens? You put a gun to an angel's head, right? Angel comes back and gets you. Angel, I didn't say a demon, an angel, all right? Demons, as they are portrayed in the Christian faith, is a foreign thing to our Torah Jewish understanding. And even in the Islamic traditions, where they speak of the jinn, all right? The jinn aren't even what the Christians think. Our brothers in Islam, they understand that amongst the jinn, you have righteous ones who actually believe in God and observe different forms of religion and observance and try to be holy. Holy Janine, is that possible? I don't know. I guess you're going to have to interact with the jinn. But we don't seek to do that any more than do I actually seek to, speak to the animals in nature. I love nature. I love animals, all kinds. The other night I was joking, I wish I had a pet alligator kind of stuff, right? But I'm not going to go out into the Great Smoky Mountains, find myself a big grizzly bear and sit down and try to have a philosophical conversation. No. Any more so that I would go out into the Great Smoky Mountains to try to speak to the entities out there and manipulate them for my purposes. That is strange foreign activity, which we call idolatry. However, if you want to go out into nature and experience the greatness and try to hear what we call the songs of the angels in nature and talk to the flowers and have the flowers talk back, that you could do. We know all about this kind of stuff, even interacting with angels and the angels, I should say, behind animals, or the animals behind angels, whatever, from something, a very famous midrash called Perek Shirah. Yeah, in our meditative traditions, you can do that. But now, the time that we have left, let's focus on these Shemot Kodashim. In our next lesson, I'm going to introduce to you that second 6 letters of the 42 letter, and I'm going to explain to you what it is, okay? Kibel Rinat Amecha. That's what we can call it. Do we actually say these names? We'll get into that in our next lesson. But what these names are, they're not actual names of God. Everything in the universe is essentially a name for God or an expression of God. But these combinations of sounds have a specific focused intent. And just to recite a combination of sounds in and of themselves is really nothing. It's a vessel. And unless you fill the vessel with something, therefore making it a carrier for what's in it, then the vessel is not really performing its function. Now remember this. All minds are interconnected. Kol Yisrael aruvin ze lezeh, it says in the Gemara. All Israel aruv. The word aruv means mixed together, interconnected. There is that quantum entanglement of souls, all souls, human souls being a subsection of that. So as such, by learning proper psychic developments, we can tap into the greater collective of things. And being that we tap into the greater collective of things, rather than receive from the collective or create in the collective something negative and harmful, I'm afraid of this and that, and therefore you create the reality of which you fear. That is what we call a husk, a shell, a veil, a klipa, between you and the psychic reality which you seek. Those usually reside in the individual human subconscious, and needless to say, in all elements or practices of meditation, you have to get through that, right? We call that mitpashpesh b'ma'asav. A person examines one's behavior and stuff and gets rid of all the internal nonsense and garbage. Only then are you going to have clarity of heart. Then you can have clarity of mind to then start to use the power of the mind in mental, constructed, focused direction, or in Hebrew, kavanah. Kavanah, intent, is everything. So as we're going to learn, when I get into the next class and explain to you practices, specific combinations of sounds which we call names, we enliven these names with the power of Hashem, Yud, Vav, K, according to that old Sefer Yetzirah formula that we even mentioned in our previous class. And we channel this through the power of mind, combined with the emotional component, through the chanted word. So yeah, these things are said aloud. So anybody's just moving their mouth without any sound isn't doing anything. So when in our Torah tradition, we pray and we are saying words, as you know, well, those words aren't wishful thinking. Those who properly understand what we call kavanot, which is what the Ariel and the Rashash system is all about, we know that we are actually creating the mental construct and projecting into the collective consciousness, the focus of the desire that we seek. Each individual, therefore, is a psychic warrior and being of power who individually, inside the limits of your own home, inside the limits of your own mind, can have an influence on the entire universe, all the more so the entire human race. So it doesn't matter who you are. Remember the famous Tana Deve Eliyahu, Eliyahu Rabbah, chapter 9? It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew or not Jewish. It says also that if you're free or enslaved, today I think we're kind of all enslaved. Based upon what a person does, we can, in quote, receive what's called Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is the psychic evolution of the mind, psychic abilities. Every one of us has the ability and the power to tap into it. First, you have to unlearn what you have learned, as Master Yoda said, and get rid of all the fantasies and the delusions and the make-believe and the fears that you have, which have enslaved your mind and your heart. Cast them all aside. You want to respond to any projected negativity upon you? All right? Look to God in emunah pshuta, simple faith. Yeah, that really is the source. Block out the negativity with just a wall of positivity. God is with me. In cases like this, a projected negative psychic force, ignorance actually is bliss, because you can just ignore it and it blocks it out. You believe in hope and faith. But I'm going to teach you how to project positive energy. But just now, in conclusion, remember, forget about this nonsense of magic. Forget about this nonsense of avodah zara. Forget about this nonsense of trying to manipulate other forces that are really out there. Focus on what we can do. Bonding with God, learning the powers that are within us to use, like we talked about in the Sefer Yetzirah. Now is our time to put it all into action. Next class, that's where we'll start. Ariel BaalZebub here, Kosher Torah School. Check us out online. I'll see you then. Shalom.